To support the production of today's radio program and to access extended episodes, please visit okpodcast.com/subscribe. Thank you and enjoy the show.
I just really enjoy promoting music by composers that are still alive. That's something I feel is really important, and I really enjoy doing that.
You're listening to OK Podcast, a podcast by Sean Perrin about Radiohead. Welcome back to OK Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Perrin, and this is the show where we discuss the musical and cultural impact of the world's greatest band, Radiohead. Today's special guest is called Sequoia Sounds, who is another great YouTuber who creates stunning renditions of Radiohead songs. This includes some you might not expect for solo piano, like There There and Burn the Witch. We discuss how he creates such rich textures in his music by sort of making the illusion of a third hand, which songs are coming up next, including some recreations of Radiohead songs he's got planned, and some other material that really motivates him as a musician and composer. So I'm here today with Sequoia, who is the owner of the Sequoia Sounds YouTube channel, and he's coming to us today from Portland, Oregon. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for asking me, Sean.
So I first want to get started. You are an amazing YouTuber with some excellent piano covers of Radiohead. I'm sure that many listeners have seen some of your covers, whether they know it or not. But if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself as a person and also your musical background so we could all get a feel for who you are as a person and musician, that'd be great.
I've been going by Sequoia only since 2017. I've kind of grown up mostly within the kind of classical establishment. I kind of learned classical to begin with, but I've always branched off. I've always loved dipping into the more experimental, weird and wonderful music from kind of all genres. I kind of listen to everything. I like to kind of find whatever is under every pebble in every corner of the world kind of thing. So even though I work mostly in classical, my interests have been much kind of more broader than that. So yeah, I've really been into experimental rock, free jazz as well. But I didn't actually start doing piano covers until late 2016. It was partly due to a chance encounter with this amazing person who actually is the reason why I've been immigrating from UK to the US. And it was only for her that I started doing some Radiohead covers because it's her favorite band. And while we were still communicating, while I was in the UK and she was in the US, I wanted to kind of share, little gifts with her. And I just put them on YouTube as unlisted originally, just because it was only for her. I had no idea that if I, once I'd made them public, that suddenly really it was unexpected, the kind of interest. I think it's really thanks to someone, I can't remember who it was, someone I think shared one of the videos on Reddit, which I knew nothing about Reddit. And I think it really kind of exploded from there.
I love that it comes from such a place of almost like little love letters almost, I guess.
Yeah, I'm very appreciative for the many things, many new journeys that this unexpected connection has brought into my life.
So let's talk a little bit about the name. I mean, Sequoia, is that coming from the type of tree?
Actually, it was the name that I was bestowed upon arrival in Portland when I moved here. Because, I had been using another moniker for my recordings when I put them on YouTube, just so they weren't the kind of thing that I was really doing. I didn't put my real name down. But then once I realized this was going to be a thing, I sort of thought, okay, I've got to pick something that is actually going to last now. And because everyone, I have graciously accepted Sequoia as the name that everyone calls me here. And so it just made sense just to add the sounds on, because I also have various other projects that I put I have Sequoia Experimental Food Labs, and I do weird video stuff as well. So Sequoia Sounds is kind of a subsidiary of a number of things that I enjoy doing.
That's very cool. So are you very tall then? Why did you get this nickname?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm 6'3".
So how did you decide which songs to start with as far as your arranging? Because I know that you've done several from different albums now, but was this your first time kind of getting into Radiohead when you met her, or?
I had been like a fan of Radiohead. I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm not a huge fan. I definitely was. I wasn't interested into Radiohead until Kid A came out. When I first saw Kid A, I thought, this is really. I feel like this is an unusual a trajectory for what was a pretty, in my mind, a very commercial. I mean, I find like a computer like just too commercial for my kind of taste. So Kid A was a really a way that made my ears pick up. And I think since then, I really appreciate them, their creativity. I wouldn't say, I mean, maybe there might be like 4 tracks on each album that I really love, and other ones I probably don't tend to listen to. But yeah, I have immense appreciation, and some of the tracks I just really love. The first ones I picked out were some of her favorites, and then I've kind of dipped into some of my favorites as I've gone along, as well as anyone who has got on my channel will realize that I kind of went off the road into the wilderness with other bands that I suddenly decided I want to have a go at, because they're kind of more closer to my heart. So.
Well, I do love the different mix of music. Like you've got everything from more classical type pieces like Barber on there, and newer composers like Jan Tiersen, and even some weirder ones like Ligeti. But then you're doing Nine Inch Nails, Rush, Yes, Radiohead, Zappa. Like it's quite an interesting mix of different composers. You say that some of the other bands are more near and dear to your heart. Are you talking about Yes and Rush and things like that, or?
The Yes and Rush were based on commission arrangements that I had done for a larger band, which I actually have posted on there since. No, I mean, I'm kind of more into I think really one of my first loves for finding music that interested me was kind of more down the kind of Zappa route, which I kind of discovered about 1990. And, from that, I particularly really eclectic kind of prog stuff like Mr. Bungle is particularly like a favorite. There's a lot of other bands that I really enjoy, but trying to do piano covers of them is a real challenge. Particularly just that, once you take out the actual drum, the rhythm track, it's amazing how many songs just lose everything, the kind of drive. And I have felt that sometimes trying to add that drive back in makes the arrangements very convoluted. So I certainly haven't really felt that I've made arrangements of really the kind of stuff that I would really love to play. But I would just have to be a bit more creative in the way that I do those. But I have lots of things planned for the future. Yeah.
I do find it very interesting that you say that, because one of the things I was just going to comment on was how you like to select, or seem to like to select, Radiohead songs in particular that I wouldn't necessarily think someone would pick to play as a solo piano arrangement. And I'm referring to songs like In Limbo, Jigsaw Falling Into Place, or There There. These are very rhythmic songs.
I guess there's a certain point where I do like the challenge of picking songs that other people are not really covering. The thing as a composer, I've always enjoyed the illusion of like layering. It's like giving the impression that there's more layers than what seems possible for just 2 hands. And so I think I have been drawn to as much actual challenge of some of these songs and thinking, okay, that kind of sounds possible in order to have the bass and the middle chords and then the top registers. I mean, how am I going to create an illusion that I'm playing everything at once? And a lot of it is kind of a foolery. I mean, someone who who can really shoot music will understand how I've done that. But I kind of like the fact that it sounds as if there's maybe an extra hand somehow going on, but it's trickery actually. There's a way of like splitting the middle voice between some of the left hand and some of the right hand, constantly swapping between the two.
I think an example of what you're talking about here that first piqued my interest was your cover of Like Spinning Plates in particular. No one else ever done this that I've ever heard, even in covers that are more like complete as maybe full band versions, you could say. But you are somehow managing to incorporate the entire normal line that, Tom would be playing on the synthesizer that's reversed. But then there's also that little fleeting right hand notes that you're fitting in just amazingly well, and they manage to just complement the mix in a way that I wouldn't have imagined to do that, but it's so brilliant.
It's a mixture of the two released versions, at least that I knew of at the time. I mean, I found the most of it is based on Tom York's like live version, where he's just playing piano, and that wasn't. I felt that wasn't just to copy what he was doing. wasn't making an interesting arrangement, and of course the actual released version is really like very interesting synth tones, which you can't really achieve on the piano. So I was just trying to pick out elements of that to actually fuse the two arrangements together. So it is an arrangement of like both of the released versions, so simultaneous.
Well, someone else might have heard that. Even many times I've listened to that, it sort of just seems like background filler or fluff in the background almost. It adds to it, but you managed to make it the icing on the cake and really fill it in, and it's a really, really cool arrangement of that piece.
Oh, thank you.
So what you said you had a couple other projects next. So what else are you planning, and are they in the Radiohead realm or?
Yeah, I actually have recently been revisiting a lot of my early arrangements because I just wasn't very happy with them for a number of reasons. So I've been revising. I mean, I'm probably going to be staggered with other bands that are not Radiohead, but the next one that I will post will be another version of They're There, which is, again, I want to approach them a bit more creatively, not quite so exact to the originals. And also the other thing is just that in view for a future point where I'd like to actually perform this stuff live, I just need to not make them just so like an onslaught of, because I kind of stuck everything in them, but they're really quite exhausting to play, and so the idea of a whole evening, so just to simplify things without taking stuff out is the kind of challenge.
And so you mentioned a live series. Are you going to be doing a concert?
I was actually planning on doing some live series this year, but what with COVID and the quarantine and losing pretty much all of my music work, it's that is now that's going to have to be for future time now.
Yeah, it's really too bad because so many musicians and even me, one of my favorite things in the summers is checking out shows and concerts and things like that, and nothing's happening now. Nothing's happening for the foreseeable future. I don't know if live music will really exist the same way. The idea of, I went to Osheaga Festival twice, and that's in Montreal. I think there's 100,000 people there on a good day. I mean, I can't see packing 100,000 people into even an outdoor venue as being a reasonable idea after this. So, but what does that mean for big bands like Radiohead too, that kind of rely on those numbers to get them out on the road?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think technology is there waiting for us to embrace it a bit more. I think like virtual reality will also, liberate people from having to necessarily worry about booking venues, performance venues, the way that you can have virtual concerts happening and people can just tune into. I don't know. Maybe there's more of a future in that. I feel that whatever it feels odd now will become the actual normal. We just need to get used to the fact that it's not going to be the same.
Yeah, well, hopefully it comes back at some point, and I definitely do think that all kinds of music are really, really missed at this point. It's been sort of the year without music, which is a very kind of sad thing.
Well, I'm actually sure that there's actually been so much creativity in music. It'd be very interesting at a later date to see what people have been creating over this time. Because in times of stress and trouble, there's always a surge of creativity happening. I mean, it's just that we don't have access to it right now. But I'm excited to see what people are making this year. I think there's probably been an abundance of stuff.
Do you find that you personally relate to that? Like, despite the hardships, you've been able to kind of hunker down and work on some projects?
I have a little bit more this year. Like I say, what with moving countries and not having very much time to do so, and landing here and taking a long time to be able to get a work permit, I've had to put a lot of my creativity aside and arrangements aside in order to just survive, so that I can stay here. That's been my focus, unfortunately. And it was just one of those unfortunate things. I just began to feel I was turning a corner, and then quarantine happened, so I've been knocked back again. But that's the way it goes. So, but I have been rushing, because I have lots of arrangements that I started and just haven't finished. So it's not that I haven't been creating, but I just need to get back and finish stuff now as I have find the time to do so. So it will be little stragglers coming in just now and again, rather than the kind of output I was able to release in 2016, 2017.
Yeah, it's funny because I think that so many people are in kind of both camps, really. Like, some people I find are really using or really finding this as a chance to kind of hunker down and do what they need to do. But a lot of other people, it's not so simple, And even myself, like, I'm very lucky to still be employed. I'm working now full time from home on everything, and we've got a 2-year-old running around, and it's not like she can go off to daycare or something. So it's kind of crazy, So I have not really felt the creative bug myself the last 8 months. It's been kind of a different sort of time. But so let's talk a little bit more about, like, digging into one of your arrangements. Like, how would you get started with an idea? For example, you mentioned There. You want to kind of have another go at that one. When you sit down at the piano, like, what's your workflow like? What do you do?
The first thing is that is transcribe. I can't work from just what I'm hearing. So there's a convoluted style where I basically have to transcribe everything, so I see everything in front of me, and it's only from that I can arrange. I just don't have that kind of gift to arrange by ear, and this is probably the reason why I haven't been posting much. Just that the amount of effort and time and brain faculties I needed to transcribe is not something I actually enjoy either. I find it really time consuming, and I don't find it easy by ear. But once I get to the actual arrangement, I really enjoy that. I find the actual arrangement process of it pretty quick. I can normally arrange a song in a single day. It doesn't take me that long to arrange it.
So do you kind of write down what you hear from, like, a more orchestral standpoint and then reduce it to piano?
I will write down normally on up to 3-4 staves everything that I'm kind of hearing, so I can see all the lines, and then it's just a fun of, like, trying to work out what to keep, and I try and keep everything, which is impossible. So you have to be creative. It's like, it's more about giving the illusion of something. It's like, sometimes I think, illusion of, like, giving the listener is following a line and thinks that they're hearing all of that line, but they're not really. It's just like cheating. It's like a ducking in and out, like faders, just like layers of it, really. Burn the Witch, for instance, it's so much like jumping around in order for 3 layers that are quite static, stay quite static in the actual area of the range that they are in. But there's actually a lot more where the actual main melody, like, sometimes it might happen where each individual note of the melody as it goes on may be played by alternate hand, and it just sounds as if it's. Sometimes there's a lot more. It's just really hard to kind of explain. I think if people see the sheet music, they would understand more the way that I'm arranging it.
Well, and this requires a very advanced technical understanding too. So for people listening, like what he's doing basically is taking three or four, maybe five different staffs of music or staves of music and trying to convert them into doing just with your two hands. When sometimes, a bass guitar part might be a really long way from a lead guitar part or a synthesizer or something. So first of all, you must have very big hands, but also your technical ability to kind of work through these problems must be quite remarkable too.
Well, I will, for bass line, I will swap the octaves sometimes and put things up,
But these are the kind of tricks that you have to have a very advanced knowledge of piano to kind of understand. So it's just so, like, I could love to have an idea like that, but it wouldn't even come to me because I don't have that experience on the instrument,
Well, I think it's purely what it is. It's just, my own experience on the instrument, getting to know my own physical habits and, the kind of formations that my hands feel nice, in the same way that I enjoy the expanse of like Rachmaninoff harmonies and chords, which are very wide, rather than I find music that's much more delicate and clear, like you could say like some of Bach or Mozart are much harder for my physical, because I have quite a wide span. So I always enjoy expansive written music much more anyway.
And which classical pieces do you feel influenced this kind of style too? Like, did you play a lot of Liszt or?
I've never been one for standard repertoire. I think like the first composer that I really started enjoying on playing piano was like Bela Bartok, 20th century Hungarian composer, and then of course I got into Stravinsky, and then I primarily have had interest in contemporary classical. I very rarely play standard repertoire. I will for like friends, but it's not something I kind of really want to do it in public. So the more weird and wonderful and creative and now I just really enjoy promoting music by composers that are still alive. That's something I feel is really important, and I really enjoy doing that.
Well, it's like locally. I live in a city where they have different it's not a very old city, but they have different classes of historical buildings. And if something is not in a certain class, then it gets knocked down and something new gets built. But what they don't seem to realize is that if you never let everything age, it never gets to those more valued classes of history or whatever, right? So we're going to have a gap where a lot of stuff was just kind of wiped out. And I wonder if that's kind of happening in music too, where we sort of revere the old classical composers like Beethoven, etc. But this modern age, a lot of people outside of scholars don't know a lot of modern music. So you ask them like, who's a modern composer outside of film soundtracks like Hans Zimmer? I'm not really sure that they would know Arvo Pärt, and Ligeti is no longer around, but some of these other composers of the 20th century that we would have with us, John Cage, Philip Glass, Elliott Carter, all these people.
Well, I think one of the other problems that I feel is that now I think most people only get to listen to things because there's a visual element to it, and that's something that I've always felt about uneasy of YouTube in like developing whatever I do in YouTube, making it more flash or anything. I haven't really been interested, because I still mostly prefer listening to music where I can only hear the audio. I like listening with my eyes shut. That's how I like to listen. And I guess, there isn't a lot of classical music that has, it's not like you have music videos for classical music. And so, as you say, people only get to hear classical music if it's associated with a film. And so a lot of people listen to, music which is hundreds of years old, but without realizing that it's 100 years old, just because it's involved with an advert or a film. It is a bit of a dilemma of how to get people to know that music exists out there and get access to it when people are only searching for a visual way of enjoying music.
Do you think that art of listening to music as just music is kind of getting lost?
I think if it is, it may be only temporary. I feel like things come back in circles. I think there will be a time when, I mean, in the same way that, that you can become saturated in a certain kind of way. I mean, I think even if you think of kind of movies, there is the kind of saturation that can happen when you're bombarded with, louder, faster, more explosions. People just after a while, I think, okay, maybe these seem the same now, and I want something different. So it would take its time, but I still have hope that a different kind of listening, in the same way that people have gone back to vinyl, and even like a tape cassettes now is quite interesting.
I was just going to say the whole vinyl thing. I mean, I find it so weird, but it almost reminds me of in the classical world, there's this phenomenon of like Baroque ensembles, Baroque music, like Bach. They insist on playing it with what they call period instruments. So, like, they get together and they'll play, a very old type of flute or whatever all together as a group. But vinyl is kind of a rejection of the Spotify age of just streaming whatever you want. I mean, you got to sit down and commit to that side of the record, anyways, and get up and change it every 10, 15, 30 minutes, and kind of more intimate with the music.
Yeah, it does create a completely different journey with the music. Yeah, that way, for sure.
It's totally interesting. So what other music outside of Radiohead? And Yes, I mean, I love Yes too, by the way, actually. I got to see them last year, maybe 2 years ago now. What other kind of music like that do you draw inspiration from, and should we maybe even check out?
I tend to be always on a search for new stuff all the time. I think when I find favorites, in some ways, I don't listen to them so much because I know that they exist if I need to go to them. So a lot of time, for instance, I mean, I'm a big John Zorn fan, and I love dipping into his labels and just seeing what weird and wonderful things have been released. I'm always looking for new stuff. I think I tend to follow two basic criteria. I mean, one thing, I like to be taken on a roller coaster. I really enjoy not knowing what's coming. I really love that I can't predict what's coming. That's one criteria. And the other criteria is that I like to be moved. I love to be moved when I listen to something. So even a simple song, if it's done really sincerely, I mean, it can be even a language I don't understand. It can transcend that human link with people that you don't know, is such a powerful thing in music. So I'm happy to have both, and so that means that's why my listening is very extreme. I mean, I'm happy to listen to the most simplest thing and the most complex music as well, from Japanese hardcore thrash, to like the simplest, or like just sine wave that isn't even seemingly moving. Just everything in between those two things. So not a lot that's going to actually translate to piano in many ways. A lot of what I listen to just wouldn't make any sense.
And you mentioned very early towards the beginning today, maybe we'll kind of focus on this just towards the end here, but you said you're also a composer. Are you writing your own music as well, or?
I've always written my own music, yes, since I was in high school. In some ways, it is more of a accidental. I didn't set out to be a composer, but rather just to kind of document what I felt, what was going on in my life, but in a musical way rather than writing it down in words. So it's been like a diary, pretty much. So yeah, they kind of have always been more kind of personal pieces, but I have begun to share them over more like maybe the last 5-6 years. And I'm interested to see if I put the odd one onto YouTube, just to see, I don't know, just to be interested, to actually give them wings a little bit, to be of interest. But it's not like a drive. I don't have any particular interest in trying to make my name as a composer. It's just something that is really important to me. I really enjoy doing it. It's a great tool to externalize.
Do you have any of the pieces on YouTube now? I don't think I saw any.
No, I don't have. There's just a simple arrangement I made of My Love's a Red Rose that I shared. I think that's the only thing, but that was just an arrangement, of course.
What kind of form of it or genre is the music? Is it like song form or more kind of longer, sonatas, or what are you writing?
Again, I've always written as much as little solo piano pieces that are probably the quickest of my diary entries. I also have written plenty of experimental pieces for rock bands and for jazz units as well. Have really rarely got them performed by real musicians, but again, I have been starting on some initial steps to find musicians here in Portland that would like to collaborate on such things.
I think Portland's a great place for that too. There's a lot of big art scene down there.
I'm really immensely grateful to be here in Portland. I think again, my choices of what I write are to do with if I have an idea, if I can find someone else who's achieved it for me, I'd rather listen to it. That's perfect. If someone's done the job for me, it's like, oh, fantastic. I don't have to do that idea. But if there's something I want to hear and I can't find someone who's kind of approached that, then I like to try it out myself. That's really what inspires me in some ways.
Well, I think you found a really good niche. For example, your video of Jigsaw falling into place is your most views. It's close to 50,000 views now just for that one video, which is amazing. But us Radiohead fans out there, we've got to subscribe to his channel, though, because there should be an equal number of subscribers for that amazing video. If you're looking for a great channel to check out some awesome covers, be sure to head over to YouTube and search for Sequoia Sounds. So, Sequoia, before we go today, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, just to say that there, even though I've been a little bit quieter late, there is more stuff on the way. And like I say, I will be releasing not only some new Radiohead, probably maybe not to next year, but before then there will be some revised, much better recorded arrangements of the ones that I've already posted. So
we didn't talk a lot about your Patreon community in there, but do you take requests and things like that? Do people commission them, or?
I actually haven't had many people Patreon. I think I might have 5 Patrons.
So head to Patreon too. Support this man.
But I also haven't been really posting anything for a while, so that's kind of understandable. And and Patreon changed their the way they made certain changes that have not made smaller donations worth it to people as well. What with the fees and things, so it's been quite understandable. I don't have the best business sense on me. I'm not I'm not someone who really pushes what I do out there. So I'm not blaming that on anyone but me.
Fair enough. Yeah, Patreon is it's a tough sort of place, but I'm trying to think of a song that I'd like to see you cover. But you've actually done a lot of the very more interesting ones that I would have hoped for, like Everything is Right Place and Arpeggi, and especially Like Spinning Plates. Like I said, I really, really like that one. What about something from, you say you're not really a big fan of OK Computer, but what about like a little more off the beaten path one, like Airbag or something like that for piano? Do you know that song?
There is pretty obvious that the earlier albums I think are easier. It was arranged. I've really enjoyed maybe more the songs from the latest albums, but because they're much more textural, that's more kind of it's a lot more of a challenge to think about how am I going to achieve that on piano. There's part of me that would love to attempt to make an arrangement of like everything. However impractical that is, and there's certainly arrangements that I've made that I've kind of discarded, or at least temporarily discarded, just because I just didn't feel that I quite was getting over the issues. Like I say, not only some of the textural ideas, but also the idea of like what happens when you take away the actual rhythm track is a big challenge sometimes, because a piece can really fall flat without that drive.
Well, maybe something from the King of Limbs, but like you say though, that's a very rhythmic album. So much so they actually had to add a second drummer when they toured it live. So.
Right. I think if the rhythm is also in the bass part, that it often still translates. If there's rhythm in the whole band and it's still rhythm in the guitar, but it's where only the drums are driving. If the drums are driving solely the track and everything else is quite ambient on top, then yeah, that's a real challenge to know really how to get around that without it sounding convoluted again. I would say like one of the Mr. Bungle arrangements that I did, I tried to put the clatter of the drum part back in, but I just felt that I just added just too many notes. It didn't really work.
Yeah, I mean, a song like Morning Bell, has this nice sort of synth thing going throughout. Not a real driving bass line so much. But it's all those drums. The drums are. I imagine if you take those away, it'll sound a bit like Morning Bell on the other album. So, well, thank you so much for chatting with me today. If we are listening to this on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, I guess, or Spotify, the conversation will end here. But I'm also trying to grow my Patreon base, so we're going to do a couple more questions that are going to be left just for the Patreon backers. So, thanks so much for listening, and don't forget to check out Sequoia Sounds on YouTube.